unfiltered discussions, unexpected guests. No topic is off limits, from sex and relationships to the human condition, personal anxieties, and so much more. The only talk show of its kind in the world. This is The Last Show with David Cooper.
Hello, welcome, lots to cover tonight, and here's what you'll learn on this evening's program. The sun, our star, it's an outrageous toddler that has outbursts, and 3 giant solar outbursts have recently exploded, and they're heading towards Earth at the speed of, well, not light, because we saw them, but we'll feel them soon. Anyway, it's going to prompt aurora all over North America, and we'll tell you all about that and other science news stories in about 10 minutes' time. After that, we'll have a scholar on that dared to dream big enough, that dared to do the impossible. This researcher yelled at seagulls for science. Turns out the birds actually listen. That's right, scientists found, using the scientific method, that if you yell at gulls, they'll stop stealing your food. This finding perhaps more important than Newton's discovery of gravity or Archimedes' invention of the bath. So how to protect your picnic from seagulls halfway through the hour. That's just some of what we'll cover tonight, some of the things you'll learn, but for now, let's dive in.
Want to be part of The Last Show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
Have you ever wanted to communicate with bees? Well, you might be able to with Morse code. It is science news with Jesse Rogerson, a professor at York University. Bees have learned how to read. Shakespeare? A dictionary? I'm not so sure. Jesse, welcome to the show.
Hey, David. Always good to be here.
Now, this paper. Like when they say bees reading, I feel like the people who work at universities, they summarize the work, they publish a little press release, and they say bees can read. But I doubt that is the full story here.
So what they did here, this is learning how to read like a modified, very simplified version of Morse code. And we all know Morse code was like the short dots and the long pauses, right? So the idea here was they used flashing lights, and one had a long flash and one had a short flash, and they took a bunch of bees and they gave them something to go to, something sugary, bees like sugar, and they directed them through pathways using either a short or a long burst of light. And they mixed it up. Like they had different groups of bees, and some would be directed by a short burst of light and some would be directed by the long burst of light. And they would train these bees over and over again until they were starting to make the correct decisions based on the burst of light. And when once they did that, they got like a trained group of bees. Then they took the sugary treat away and then just started directing them down pathways using those same burst of light. And the result was the bees followed what they originally were taught. If it was a long burst of light, they followed that, thinking they were going to get a nice special treat at the end of it. And that right there is proof that bees can discern between a long burst of light and a short burst of light, a modified Morse code, and have temporal reasoning, which is not something we'd seen in bees before.
So it's really just they can pick up on visual cues that we didn't realize they could. It's not that they're reading a novel and then giving a full book report.
They're not giving us reviews of Shakespeare. But it's not just visual cues. It's understanding temporal differences, that there's long and short, which is not something you would expect necessarily, because there's nothing known in the bee world that would require understanding of long and short differences. So they weren't expecting to see this ability.
So it's like they can discern time in a way that we never thought they could, and that requires a higher level of brain processing or something like that than we thought was possible.
Even in a brain that is the size of a poppy seed, a tiny little brain, they even went as far, the scientists said, that this may just be a built-in part of a neuron. So even on brains that are really, really small, temporal reasoning is still a sort of part of the any brain, really, any neural capacity. So it was there. And this blows my mind about this story is that bees, they've been shown to do farming. They've been shown to teach each other how to solve problems. And they've even been shown to do a little bit of like symbolic math. Like they're not doing like calculus or anything, but they can like handle sort of logic questions a little bit. And now you can add into this Morse code bees are blowing my mind. They're like some of the most complex creatures and super really cool to learn about.
And they got the whole hive mind thing going on with the queen and the workers and the drones. I mean, they're fascinating creatures. They sort of function, the whole hive sort of functions as a whole organism, but it's interesting to see on an individual level how smart they are as well.
Yeah, have you seen Bee Movie? It's exactly like that.
I have not. Jerry Seinfeld's greatest flop? I have not. I stopped with him after the show ended because it's just, chasing the dragon, I guess. All right, let's talk about standing desks. I remember I used to work in a big office, and anyone who used a standing desk, I just thought was arrogant. You think you're better than me standing there, more healthy with your body not hunched and crunched and crouched over a laptop 24 hours a day like me. I have terrible posture, and it's probably because I don't use a standing desk. But anyone who uses them, I just think they're arrogant. I know they're good for you. But a new paper says sitting and standing is good for you, not just one or the other.
I know this is like published in the journal of I think we all know this, right? the idea that sitting all day, every day in a sedentary type of job is bad for you. We all know this, right? But the question I think that this group was trying to figure out is what's the best way to deal with it? Because standing also is a problem, right? If you just stand all day, especially if you have poor posture, can be bad as well. So what they did with this group is they identified, they had participants who were having back pain at that moment within the last month, and they already had sit-stand desks, ones that went up and down. And they tested out two groups. One group, they gave a very specific prescription. You're going to sit for 30 minutes, and then you're going to stand for 15. That's the ratio, back and forth all day. And then the other group of people, they said, we need you to stand and sit, but do it your own way with whatever ratio you want. And what they found at the end of this is that both groups who were doing sitting and standing reported less back pain. But the group with the awesome ratio said their back pain was much better than the other group. And they also said their stress was down. They focused better. They didn't feel like they had to be so present at work all the time because they were nailing their work more often. So the having the specific ratio of 30 minutes down, 15 minutes up was really, really helpful for people.
Interesting. At least they're not as arrogant as those people who use the treadmill desk. My old office in my employer back 10 years ago, there was one treadmill desk and everyone wanted to use it. And I was just like, you guys are so arrogant. I like that you said it's from the academic journal we all knew this already from both Oxford and Harvard probably. We're covering a paper later in the show with our foreign correspondent Tony Five of a woman who did research into how to get seagulls to get away from you on a beach. And it turns out yelling at them is the way to do it. And she was funded by the Royal Society or something in England. This is a funded research paper. And I'm like, well, come on. You just have to yell at seagulls.
But we're going to find
out. Squawk back. We're going to find out more about that later in the show. So do you recommend to people to buy these fancy, desks that are sit and stand with a little button on them, like a desk elevator? Is this research all funded by that company? Because those things are not cheap. I have a friend who has one. It's pretty cool, I guess. It's like a sit-stand desk.
I actually have one at work too, and I have gone up and down on it. I think the key here is that having a regimen that's what the research showed, is that it's not necessarily the ratio that was important. It's having a goal to stick to. Having the 30-15, if you do that over and over again, my recommendation, I'm not a health practitioner in any form, but I think the idea here is you should be not sitting all day and you should not be standing all day. You should be rotating around what you're doing with your body to keep blood flow moving. It's good for your muscles, especially when you're sitting. There's some really great research on what it does to your hamstrings. It tightens them up. So, walking around, standing, sitting in a variety of ways all day, that's my recommendation.
When we come back, the sun, the star, a temperamental child with outbursts, and 3 such giant solar outbursts have exploded and they're heading towards us. And there's going to be aurora that's forecast in North America. Pretty cool. We'll find out more about that with Jesse Rogerson, an astrophysicist, as we cover science news. Stick around.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
In the 70s, 4 young women were found dead. For nearly 50 years, their cases went cold. I'm Nancy Hixt, a senior crime reporter for Global News. In the season finale of Crime Beat, I share how investigators uncovered shocking evidence of a serial killer and hear exclusive interviews with the killer's family. Listen to the full season of Crime Beat early and ad-free on Amazon Music by asking Alexa to play the podcast Crime Beat.
Exploring both interstellar and interpersonal space-time continuums. The Last Show with David Cooper.
I always think of the sun as a temperamental child, never a star. And I'm right, because the sun has thrown outbursts, 3 giant solar ones, and they're heading towards Earth at less than the speed of light. But they're heading towards Earth. And what are the consequences? Auroras. They are forecast in North America. Let's talk solar explosions with Jesse Rogerson, a York University professor, and covers science news as well. Jesse, welcome to the show.
Hey, always good to be here. This is like, I love talking about this stuff. I know that I'm an astronomer, but this is like more how astronomy affects what happens on Earth. And that's why it's just cool to be able to point to something and say that happened in space, but now you get to go watch Aurora. And that's a really cool thing to talk about.
Aurora are some of the coolest thing I've ever seen. I've only ever seen them once. I was a kid. I was sitting on a dock in like North Ontario, you know, like in the woods, and I was kissing a lady. And during the kissing session, I thought there was UFOs in the sky, and she's like, "You're an idiot. That's the Aurora." And I was like, "Wow, this is quite a." And that was the first and only time anyone ever kissed me. Sad story, really.
Well, what a momentous occasion for you to be able to see the Aurora. That's amazing. Yeah, I've seen them a few times myself.
It was special.
Yeah, that's special. Yeah, this, as you pointed out, the sun. So the sun is in the middle of a solar maximum. The sun has an 11-year cycle. Most people don't know this, but every 11 years it goes through maxima and minima. So like it's every 6.5 years it's really, really active, and then every 6.5 year or 5.5 years it's not as active, and you get less sunspots and stuff. Right now we're in the middle of a maximum, so it's just like shooting off flares and coronal mass ejections and stuff. It's all because its magnetic field is all twisted up in a really crazy way. And so a bunch have just happened recently, and what it does is it releases a big cloud of protons and electrons, just plasma flying out in all directions. And if Earth happens to be in the way, then those protons and electrons get captured by our magnetic field, and some of them get funneled towards the poles, and you get them smacking into the atmosphere and making beautiful lights in the sky. Greens and reds are the most common. Very, very cool to see. Unfortunately, you usually have to be at higher latitudes to see them. Like above the 49th is best. But this one was such a good show that it was even down into the mid-states last night, and it's going to be again pretty good tonight.
Can I see them from the top of my building in New York, or is there just way too much light pollution? Not going to happen.
That's the problem. Yeah. So the big problem for you, in anybody in a big major city, is that light pollution will play a role here. I have seen very strong outbursts of aurora in the middle of like a city like Calgary. So Calgary's a pretty big city. It's got a pretty big light bubble, but around Calgary, there's not a lot of light pollution, so you can kind of get away with it. But I think in like the New York area, in the Toronto area, in the Los Angeles area, Miami, these cities are just too big. They're too much brightness. So even if you could see them, it would be blocked out by the light pollution. So even just a half an hour drive out of that light bubble might help you see them.
You might see the coronal mass ejection, or you can check out the video coronal mass ejection. Actually, I'm not allowed to talk about that on the radio. That's indecent. I'm kidding. I'm such an idiot. All right, well, that's pretty exciting. Let's go to our next story. This one's kind of cool. Scientists often model like planets, stars, but these computer models are often not that accurate. And there's a new one that's like down to the 1 kilometer scale, which it might seem like it's not that high resolution, but a computer model of a 1 kilometer scale Earth is actually like extremely detailed, and it's super cool. Tell me about it.
I was reading over this. So are you a fan of the movie The Matrix?
Of course.
Who isn't, right? Yeah. Classic sci-fi, it's interesting. And The Matrix is sort of built on this story of like, what would it be like if you could make a simulation that was so real that you couldn't tell between reality. That's like the underpinning of that story. And for weather forecasters, for climate modelers, having a simulation of the Earth would be so useful that if you could like actually predict what was going to happen next in weather or long-term trends in climate. And they have basic ones now, and they do okay. They do a good job trying to predict what's going to happen, but lots of people notably show that climate modeling can have its problems. This is out of the Max Planck Institute in Germany, which is an incredible institution, where they took the entire Earth, they broke it down by 1.25 kilometer square cells. That's over 300 million cells for the surface of the Earth, and another 300 million for the region just above that surface for the atmosphere. And they started chugging through all the processes that happen on Earth. We're talking water cycle, we're talking energy distribution from the sun and from other things, and long-term things like carbon cycle and things that happen on the biosphere. And David, it's crazy what happens in these simulations, because what you do is you take each square of the simulation, and in that square, you have to calculate how each adjacent square affects it. So if weather is happening in 1.25 kilometers away, if the temperature is this, then how does that affect this square and the square next to it and the next one? You're talking like trillions of calculations for every like step forward in the simulation. So in order to make something like this happen, you need an incredibly large amount of hardware, and you need really, really good processing power. So that's what they did here. They got 8,000 GPUs and like a bunch of thousand CPUs to work on this, and they actually were able to simulate
basically a supercomputer.
It's a supercomputer, yeah. And they needed 2 supercomputers to make this happen. So they were able to do 145 days of Earth in 1 day of calculation. So that's pretty good.
It sounds fascinating, and I think it's really cool. And maybe they could use it to finally predict the weather properly, but probably they won't.
That's the long-term goal.
It is. I want to switch gears to something here. I want to try something that's a little bit participatory. So listen up, listener, singular intended, you. I'm talking to you, our one listener. We are going to answer any questions from the listeners about science. If you've got any general question, Jesse's your guy. He's Bill Jesse the Science something. Nothing rhymes with Jesse. And all you have to do is send Jesse a message on Instagram. That's at Jesse Rogerson. Or you can call us and leave a voicemail. The number is 1-888-505-6644. That number will come up again in just a moment. 1-888-505-6644. Call, leave a voicemail, any general science question we will answer on this show. And what's amazing is that somebody just called just now and recorded a voicemail having just heard me announce this. Jesse, can you believe that?
That's amazing that someone was that attentive and listening.
Let's play the voicemail that has a general science question for Jesse Rogerson. 1-888-505-6644. Call now. You can ask anything. No question too stupid. In fact, the stupider the question, the better. Here's the voicemail we just got amazingly.
Hello, I'm a caller of this show. My name is Davida, not David. I just called 1-888-505-6644. I hear astrophysicist Jesse Rogerson on the show, and because he's an astronomer, I want to know if aliens are real. This is not David recording an example question of what to ask a scientist. Are aliens real? Goodbye.
Davida, thank you for this question. I feel like we should get to know Davida a bit more. Just incredible questions from this incredible mind. But are aliens real? The short answer is we have no proof that aliens are real, but there's no reason why there couldn't be aliens in the universe. We just need to figure out how to find them. And it depends on how you define aliens. Do you mean like little bacteria, crawling around on a rock? Or do you want like sentient life that's actively communicating? So there's ways that we're going about that.
All right, call, leave a voicemail, general science questions. Jesse will attempt to answer them on the show. You can also follow him on Instagram at Jesse Rogerson. Jesse, what a pleasure it was having you here. Thanks for being on the show.
Always, thanks.
Coming up next, once in a generation, there's a scientist that changes everything. Newton gravity. Einstein invented E=mc², which I'm sure you all know exactly what that means. No explanation necessary. In a few moments' time, one such scientist will join us. They yelled at seagulls for science to figure out the best way to get rid of them. That's right, this person can tell you how to protect your picnic from seagulls using science. You won't want to miss it. Stick around.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644. Most shows deliver serious news that you can use. As a point of differentiation, we give you news you can't use. The Last Show, with David Cooper and special foreign correspondent, Tony Five.
We are here with our foreign correspondent, Tony Five, who has a seagull anecdote to share with all of us. Tony, welcome to the show.
David, one of my living nightmares is where I go down to the seaside and seagulls hunt me, chase me, and try to kill me, David. But you have a solution, don't you?
I do. Scholars have dreamed big enough. They've dared to do the impossible. They have yelled at seagulls for science. And it turns out when you yell at the birds, they listen. Researchers found, using the scientific method and the peer review process, that if you yell at gulls, they will stop stealing your food. It's amazing research. We're about to get into it. Newton discovered gravity. Archimedes invented the bath. Our next guest has cracked the mystery of protecting your seaside picnic from seagulls. She's Dr. Neeltje Boogert. She's an animal behaviorist at the University of Exeter. Neeltje, your research is some of the most exciting science we have covered ever. Welcome.
I wonder if I sense some sarcasm in there, but it's all good. Yes, perhaps not surprising. Anyone with children or a dog will know that when you shout at them, it frightens them, and it often gets them to stop doing whatever naughty thing they are doing. The kind of more interesting thing about this research, though, is that we actually played back a man shouting versus a man speaking at the same volume. So often shouting is scary just because it's a loud, sudden noise that sounds aggressive. But if you play back at the same volume, you really have to pay attention to the way things are said. And so it turns out that gulls are smart enough to pick up exactly how we say the words to convey a sense of threat.
Can we take a step back and just get into the why? What made you decide to study shouting at seagulls?
And who paid for it? I need to find out who paid for it.
Yeah, Big Seagull paid for it.
So there's loads of gulls in our seaside towns, both in Britain and the US. I'm sure you have them too. And what most people don't know, actually, is that at least in the UK, they are red listed. They're species of highest conservation concern because they've halved in numbers in the last 50 years. And what is quite saddening then is that in summer, you see loads of media articles about people hitting them to death with shovels because they've stolen their sandwich. And so we're really not a big fan of violence against animals. And so what I'm trying to figure out is far more peaceful ways to deter them from our food. Also, I just think it's fascinating how animal brains work. Isn't it absolutely remarkable that they pay attention to such subtlety in our voices? So just figuring out how they make the best of a bad situation really is what I find super interesting.
So shouting at the gulls, you're trying to protect them in a way. You're trying to figure out how people can get rid of them by not hurting them.
Yes, exactly. We're on a peace mission here.
Like a non-contact method, I guess. But I'm thinking now you could extend this feature. I know you only did 61 at the first point of this experiment, but maybe you can get them to sort of react to Shakespeare. Maybe different languages, maybe just David talking. I know he turns off a lot of the audience, so maybe just getting him talking will be fine.
And guests.
Yeah, so actually even just a soundtrack of someone talking was enough to make gulls flinch and stop pecking at the food and leave the area. So any kind of human interaction is off-putting for them. And also interesting fact is that only about 1 in 4 gulls that we try to lure in will engage. So we are scary to them, we are threatening. And the subset that steals our food is really just the football hooligans of the bird world. So the great majority doesn't want anything to do with us. They just want to be left in peace and get on with, surviving and rearing their chicks. And it's really only a small subset that will go for our food.
Bad apples.
Wow, so you've basically identified an aggressive group of seagulls who just like to annoy humans, because I've seen so many videos. I mean, in the UK, it's a big thing. They take their chips, they take their Greggs sausage rolls. A lot of the memes do have people being kind of violent when they've hit it, which is horrible. But obviously, sometimes it's so funny because they come in and they, a man will turn around and he'll have his chips and they'll be gone and it'll be brilliant.
Brazen.
Yeah,
brazen.
so the main thing you'll see there is that they tend to come from behind. And so it's,
Same as me.
anyone who is trying to cheat in class or anyone trying to steal something from a shop or pickpockets, they will only do it when they're not being watched. And so the main thing you can do to keep your food safe is to just keep your eye on them.
Or keep spinning around, I guess. If you just keep spinning around, they'll never get you.
Yeah.
But this
Yes.
is an evolved behavior because obviously it's been learned, right? Maybe over the last 40, 50 years, right?
Yes, exactly. And that's the other thing that's just so interesting because we know that young gulls, so the ones with brown plumage are the ones that are not mature yet. They're absolutely terrible at stealing food. So anytime they try, they fail. They're horrible. Whereas adults are successful about half the time. So it's something that they really need to learn and we don't know how they learn it. So is it that your parents raise you to adopt this behavior or do you, watch some other, the bad kids from school, doing their smoking or whatever? This is kind of a peer pressure thing. Who knows? It's just, it's remarkable, I think.
Gull peer pressure. You mentioned one of the fascinating findings that makes this research a little more serious is this idea that they react to yelling versus speaking at the same volume. Are gulls that smart? And why are they reacting to yelling versus just speaking at the same volume differently?
Well, so I think they are that smart. So we also know that they pay attention to where we're looking. We have found that if you stare at them, they know that it's a risky thing to do and they'll stop doing it. They also copy for example, the color of crisp packets. So in the UK, people love eating their crisps. And so when you eat from a green bag and there's blue and green bags lying around, they'll actually go for the green bag. So they watch what you're eating and they decide to eat the same thing, perhaps because they know it's a safe option then.
We have to pause. Tony is our American English to UK English translator. What does chips mean, Tony?
Just to confirm, Dr. Neeltje, yeah, so basically crisps are potato chips in
Okay,
the US.
got it. Okay.
We call them crisps. And for those who don't know, the green packet signifies the cheese and onion variety. The red packet includes the ready salt, which means that not only are the seagulls smart, they also have taste variation as well. Agreed?
Oh, yes, totally. Yeah, so they will definitely, I have not done this experiment myself, but I imagine that if you sit on the beach with a carrot or a crop of lettuce or cabbage.
I do that many weekends. I don't know how you know that, but I do that many weekends, yeah.
You'll probably not get harassed by gulls, is my prediction.
Tony was interested in how research like this gets funded at the beginning of the show. It's so esoteric, it's so specific, and yet so fascinating.
I mean, it's esoteric and it isn't, because just if we take this a bit more seriously, so human-wildlife conflict is going to be more and more pronounced, right? So in America, you have your black bears, you have your coyotes, raccoons going through garbage, getting increasingly aggressive as people feed them, and they start to see people as a food source. And so it's the more we spread out across the world and change everything, the more we're going to see animals in our living spaces. And I think it's essential actually to find peaceful ways to live alongside each other.
I mean, I think Lay's or Pringles should really get in on the act here because they can find out which flavor, like bears like. I would love to know black bear which flavor he would like.
So for black bears, actually, we know that when the mom is spending lots of time on picnic grounds, the cubs will become, human oriented as well to get their food. And so this can lead down some dangerous rabbit holes, obviously.
We've established the research is important. What is next in the fascinating world of gull?
That's what I want to know. What's next?
I have a whole bunch of questions. So one is, so these gulls that rely on human food, are they actually thriving or are they going to end up with massive diabetes later in life? To what extent is this a good strategy or is it actually very maladaptive? Secondly, to what extent do we give them disease? So there's loads of sewage being pumped in the ocean and they end up eating that sewage. So are they then harboring all kinds of pathogens that they might spread then with their poo, for example? And again, is there any kind of culture of seagulls being particularly dive bombing in certain times but not others? What's going on there? I think it's just really interesting.
I think seasides could really have sound machines just firing out me shouting at them. But let's try that next time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Neeltje, it was a great pleasure having you on this show and talking about your research. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, guys, and good luck with your show. It's really fun chatting.
We're going to follow it. It's absolutely amazing.
Dr. Neeltje Boogert is an animal behaviorist at the University of Exeter, and Tony Five is our foreign correspondent in London, England. A more important science story you will not hear than this. After the break, AI could be shaping how you get your next job. Companies use it to process resumes. Candidates use it to write resumes. It's a mess, and details in a minute.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
This episode is brought to you by Netflix. From the creator of Homeland, Claire Danes and Matthew Rhys star in the new Netflix series, The Beast in Me, as ruthless rivals whose shared darkness will set them on a collision course with fatal consequences. The Beast in Me is a riveting psychological cat and mouse story about guilt, justice, and doubt. You will not want to miss this. The Beast in Me is now playing only on Netflix.
The Last Show with David Cooper, where we apply quantum mechanical psychoanalytical astrotherapy to your problems.
AI and hiring. Whenever I hear about it, it can sound dystopian. People generating hundreds of resumes that are all AI, sending them to hundreds of companies, companies using AI to reject those applications en masse. Does a human ever review it? Do these systems have bias? Well, this is not fiction. This is the state of hiring right now, so let's take a critical look at it. I'm here with Kyra Wilson, an AI ethics researcher at the University of Washington, who has studied just this. Kyra, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
When you started researching this, what did you want to uncover or find out about AI hiring?
Yeah, so our initial kind of point of investigation was whether these AI tools are being discriminatory along lines of like race or gender, which is obviously illegal. And there's no easy way of auditing a lot of these tools because they're kind of made by independent companies who are not making their systems or data available to researchers. And so we were interested first in simulating the systems themselves, and then after that, simulating their interactions with, like, for example, hiring managers or recruiters that are relying on them to see kind of what effect they're actually having on the hiring process.
There is a certain irony in a company named OpenAI not disclosing how their systems work, like not having an open model.
Yes.
What are the ways in which companies are using these tools now to help them with hiring, to help them filter through resumes and decide who gets that first interview?
Yeah, so there's definitely a lot of stuff that I'm sure people have seen already before in their own kind of job search, and stuff that they probably haven't seen before. So maybe even before you've submitted a resume, recruiters are using AI tools to kind of filter through like LinkedIn profiles or resumes and picking out like who they're going to reach out to. Once you submit a resume, they'll use AI tools to kind of screen them and prioritize like which candidates do we think are the best fit right off the bat. Maybe once you make it past the resume screening stage, you're going to be interacting with like AI chatbots or some sort of like gaming system that's supposed to measure your kind of behavioral characteristics. So it really goes like all the way through the hiring pipeline. It might even help like set your compensation or benefits package when you're getting an offer. It's like throughout the entire process. Yeah.
Great. I'm negotiating with a computer now. I'm not a great negotiator. Whether we admit it or not, like we have biases. People have biases, implicit ones. They can be ugly. They can be discriminatory. And then the language that we write that these models are trained on can have those biases in them. So I guess the question is, when you looked at it, and I know it was hard to look at, did you find that these AI hiring tools had those biases that I guess in some cases are illegal or unethical?
Yeah, definitely we found some pretty severe bias. So it was worse in the case of kind of race identities. We found that Black men were like pretty highly discriminated against for most occupations. Frequently people talk about sort of gender bias in occupations. There are some common stereotypes about like what careers women versus men have. We didn't find those to be as severe as the kind of racial biases, which is good because we also don't want those, but not great because those are the ones that people often talk about when they're talking about sort of hiring discrimination. So it's kind of reframing the debate, or not the debate, but the like problem of hiring discrimination from how we used to talk about it without AI to how things are changing now that we're using these AI systems that might have their own unique biases.
Are there hopes for these companies to update their models to get rid of these biases, or do they care in some cases?
Yeah, definitely. So I think they care. They're in the U.S. the Equal Employment Commission has been very clear that if a company is using an AI tool, they'll be liable for the discriminatory outputs. And so there's a very clear incentive for people to be aware and trying to negate these biases. And we have some current research going on that's showing how we can do this. It's pretty trivial, actually, in I guess an controlled experimental setting. So it's not hopeless, but I think there definitely needs to be more attention paid to fixing the biases.
When I hear about how companies are using these tools, not just from the screening, but throughout the process to figure out how to pay me, all of this to help at every stage of hiring, it sounds dystopian to me. But on the other hand, a lot of candidates these days are using AI tools to generate job submissions. And so I kind of don't blame the companies for using these tools to, I guess, sift through all the noise. Can anything be done to change the process to make it more human these days? This is something I'm worried about. I used to be in the tech industry. I'm not anymore. If I go back, hiring seems like a daunting thing from the perspective of the person trying to get a job. Where are we? This sounds like a kind of a mess.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I would say my hope for the future is probably a long ways off. But we've gotten to this point where kind of people are using AI to apply to a bunch of jobs. And then it makes sense that companies have this very large volume of applicants. And so they need AI to sort through the resumes. And so I think it's kind of redefining how we look at hiring to consider what are we actually trying to get at? How can we evaluate that in a manageable way where not everyone can kind of apply easily, but we're not, making it unnecessarily hard. It's a difficult problem, but I'm trying to get at that it's not necessarily one that has a technical solution. It's something that inventing another AI system isn't going to fix. It's the hiring process itself at this point that isn't working.
It seems like robots competing with each other to try to land me, the candidate, the job, or land the company, a great employee. I mean, I guess an analogy would be like two chess engines playing each other. That game is not an entertaining one to watch, even though you'll probably get a good chess game.
Yeah.
Well, let's get back to the study, more about these biases in the system. You mentioned it was easy in a controlled setting for companies to filter out for these bias. In a non-controlled setting, is it easy for these companies to update their models to just have less bias in them? It seems like a hard thing to do.
Yeah, so it depends. The companies themselves, they have access to the model. They can retrain it. They might need to collect a little bit more data. So it's not necessarily easy to do, but we definitely know how to do it. I would say the more difficult part is actually for individuals who are perhaps using the tools and find that, this tool that was trained for a nurse, occupation, for example, doesn't work for me trying to hire a software engineer. And so I want to alter the model slightly so it works better in my situation where the biases might be different. And there's not a good way right now for individuals to incorporate their own contextual knowledge into these models. And so that's kind of where I think the next important step lies, is that we can't be relying on companies to do all this for us. We need to give local people the tools to make the models work for them.
That sounds like a great product idea. You shouldn't have said it on this show. You should sell that to an AI hiring company. For people looking for jobs these days in this whole structure that we're talking about, do you have any recommendations? You research into this field. If I were looking for a job today with this new AI, world that we live in, would you recommend anything?
Yeah, I mean, this feels a little unethical to recommend, but some recent
studies... Well, then you should recommend it, and please do. I'm excited to hear it.
Some studies have come out saying that AI resume screening models will prefer resumes generated by AI or content generated by AI. So I guess if you're applying, make sure that ChatGPT does go through your resume and rephrase it. or something.
I mean, it's not bad advice.
Yeah.
Just make sure that, if you got a Nobel Prize, you should put it on there.
Right.
But if you didn't get the Nobel Prize, maybe don't say that
Yeah.
you did, because ChatGPT told you.
Yeah.
Well, Kyra, thanks for coming on and sharing information about this. I really appreciate you chatting with me.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great.
Kyra Wilson is an AI ethics researcher at the University of Washington. Coming up, broadcasting's only mental health specific content you'll hear on a Wednesday intended for a Thursday. It's Therapy Thursdays on a Wednesday, and we'll discuss what to do when a family member goes no contact with you or when you need to go no contact with a family member.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644. When your therapist won't take your calls anymore, there's always the last show with David Cooper.
Low contact, no contact, Joe contact. Joe contact we're not going to discuss today, but it is Therapy Thursdays on a Wednesday, and no contact is something that happens, I'm sure you already know, but when in a family or in a group of friends, somebody behaves so badly they get cut off by an individual, or you're the one who gets cut off, and that is what happens to some parents. That is what happens with some kids. We are here with Gary Direnfeld to discuss just that. Gary, welcome to the show.
Great to be with you, David. This no contact thing, typically, this is when relationships truly run amok. There are some kids, they grow up, they say, look, I don't like how I was treated as a kid. It continues now into my adulthood. You haven't taken responsibility as my parents. Bye-bye.
Yeah, I did it when I was in my mid-20s. Side note, I love my parents very much now. They're so annoying, but I love them, and they're funny annoying now. They're not brutal annoying, but it happens. I think I was emotionally disturbed as well. I was unwell. They were behaving badly. It was a race to the bottom. We can talk about it or not important. But this idea that your parents are either too overbearing, they are too strict, they did not give you the childhood you want or needed. I mean, it could be extreme
case. Or they were abusive, or they were alcoholic,
exactly,
or not protective, or neglectful.
And you can decide, and people do, and sometimes it's reasonable, and sometimes it's its own form of emotional abuse. You can decide to cut contact with family.
And sometimes it actually isn't initiated by the child of the parents, but it's initiated by their partner. Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun. My parents would probably tell the story that way, although I'm going to stick up for my lovely ex and say that it was both of our decision to kind of cut them off for a time. But what are some of the reasons for it? How and how do parents best deal with it? I think is the best place to start.
I've had many parents. I've had parents and the kids both come to me alleging concerns with the others. Look, I'm not an investigator. I'm a therapist. So when somebody does come to me, I'm compelled to take their story at face value. So having said that, the parents will tell me we did nothing wrong, and my child and their partner are refusing any contact with us. When a child phones me, and I'm talking about an adult child, typically somebody in their 20s to 30s, rarely in the 40s. By then, it seems like most of the stuff has been resolved one way or the other. So the child is telling me that their parents have no boundaries, or that they're harmful and or abusive in this way or that way. They don't take responsibility, and, they're looking to cut them off. So I hear it from different people on both sides.
And how do you advise parents to deal with that? Because I feel like kids don't realize they've got a lot of power in the relationship with their parents. They don't realize it until they're in their 20s or late teens and realize that cutting contact with their parents is a way to really make a statement. You might not have felt like you had very much power in this relationship growing up, and you probably didn't. When I was 7, my parents tell me to go to school, I got to go. If my parents told me to go to school right now, I'd say, I'm not in school. What are you talking about?
but it's true. You don't have that kind of power as a kid, but as an adult, yes, you do. And the kind of scenarios that I hear from the kids, limited boundaries. I had one story of the mother-in-law who would enter the house, and
you gave your mother-in-law a key.
Yes.
What are you, nuts?
Yeah, well, that's a starting point. So, you realize you can take the key back. Oh, I don't want to offend them. What? But you're asking how to set these limits, boundaries, and expectations. A key is like having a screen door. It's so porous they can come in when you want. So the guidance did include changing the locks. But this parent would come in and from a good place, not only tidy the house, but rearrange the cupboards. So, the daughter-in-law goes to get the salt and pepper from the cupboard, and it's just not where it should be because it's where now the mother-in-law prefers. She also, in this story, she reached for a tampon while sitting on the toilet, and it wasn't there because mother had rearranged the bathroom cabinets at the same time. So yeah, we have to appreciate not all intrusions by a parent are dastardly abusive, but they're not always respectful of boundaries.
I blame the daughter-in-law here, Why did she give away the key? Why did she let it get this far? And now she's in a crisis.
And, I look at these situations and I also say, why is your partner, in this case a husband, not setting the boundary? It's your husband's parent we're talking about. He should be setting that boundary. What the hell is going on?
This one's so easy. Change the locks, couples counseling, boom, fixed. I just fixed your problems. I'm not even a therapist.
So structurally, the answer is easy. Emotionally, it's difficult. We don't want to hurt feelings. We don't want to undermine relationships. My husband is a mummy's boy. This stuff goes on. So we have to sometimes help people work through the emotions of that, setting the boundaries. And, another complaint from some kids is that the parents come over willy-nilly without asking whenever they want. Again, these are simple boundary setting issues. You were about to say something.
Well, if these are the examples that would cause people to ponder going no contact with the parents, these people are not emotionally that mature because they're getting so overwhelmed by this small stuff and they could set boundaries, but their mind immediately goes to cutting contact. Like that just seems...
So on, if we were to have, a scale from 1 to 10, you labeled one emotionally immature. I'm not going to actually argue that. On the other end of the scale, we do have those parents where there have been issues of alcoholism, drug abuse.
Yeah. Stealing, like mom or dad comes over and grabs your cash because they have a drinking problem.
Sexual abuse.
Yes.
Or where the child may have been abused by someone outside the family, but not protected by the parents, and the parents maybe sided with the abuser. We see that when perhaps an uncle has abused a child and the parent sides with their brother, the uncle, or doesn't want to make waves amongst the greater family. So yeah, there is a spectrum of severity to the issues. Central to all of this is who needs to set boundaries and who needs to take responsibility, and responsibility for what. That's the challenge for the therapist to figure out in terms of how do I perhaps guide you, how do I support you, how do I help you manage your situation.
What if the parents feel like the kids are trying to exact revenge on them, because the kid says, you behaved badly. Maybe the parent doesn't even believe they behaved badly, but the kid does. And all of a sudden they're in their 20s. They have the power to cut them off. They have their own money. They have their own career. They pay their own rent, all of that. The student loan is on them if there is one. And then the kids cut them off, and the parents feel like it's revenge for.
Yeah. So look, on the parent side, I hear a number of different stories. From absolute denial, there is nothing we do that is wrong, and they present themselves better than good, if you will. And then sometimes the parent will say that it is the daughter-in-law or the son-in-law who is affecting this. And look, there can be truth to that too. Sometimes one gets involved with a partner where that partner seeks to isolate you from your family.
Interesting. Let's continue that conversation after the break. We're here with Gary Direnfeld talking about dealing with cutting off contact with family members in the case where it's the spouse of somebody that really doesn't get along with the parents. We'll be back with Gary Direnfeld. It is Therapy Thursdays on a Wednesday.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644. Smart, sharp, and slightly unhinged. Late Night's Fresh Perspective. The last show with David Cooper.
He's the best in the biz. He's therapist and social worker Gary Direnfeld. He's here for Therapy Thursdays on a Wednesday. Our conversation about going no contact. That is when a family member stops talking to you. It often happens, well, maybe not often, but it can happen between children and parents, between siblings, and it's a serious issue for people. I mean, occasionally I'm sure people just say good riddance, but for most people, it hurts, it stings. Gary, welcome back to the show.
Good to be back. And, before the break, we were talking about when a child's spouse is the one who is isolating the child from the parents. And I've seen that in a number of circumstances where the child's spouse or partner is either abusive and or narcissistic, and they're seeking to isolate the child of the parent from the parents so that they can have them all to themselves and further exploit the person. Very tough situations. I have received phone calls, of course, from the parents who describe those situations to me. And these are otherwise nice parents. And what's weird is their child had been nice in a sense. And being a nice person can make you ripe for exploitation.
Like going with the flow.
You go with the flow. You don't want to hurt anyone, so you're acquiescing, and then you get in over your head. And I have seen those situations as well. So that parent has to be very mindful of this dynamic, tread lightly, and be aware that their child feels caught between a rock and a hard place, between their partner and the parent. And typically, the child's partner is using emotional and psychological tactics. If you loved me, you wouldn't see your parent. Oh, they're always trying to bug us. Come on. We have to set greater boundaries with them. There's this gaslighting that inducts the child of the parents deeper and deeper and deeper.
I saw a good New Yorker cartoon yesterday. It was a husband talking to a wife, and she's making sort of a frowning face, and he says, "But honey, you love being gaslit." Anyway.
And that's classic.
Yeah.
That is classic. That's a good cartoon. And it demonstrates the issue of the gaslighting so well.
It's a good cartoon. I want to offer a little counterpoint here because I just want to go back in time. A lot of conflict leading up to my wedding with my ex. Our wedding got canceled. We moved to a new country. We eloped. I called my mother the next day to tell her I got married. My parents and I didn't talk for a long time. If you had asked my parents at that time, they would have said it was my ex. But it wasn't. It was us together. And I think for a lot of parents, they're willing to forgive and see their kid in a good light. And it's very easy to blame the partner because that person's not family. I mean, they are family, but they're not seen as family. And so they're willing to forgive their child, even if it's their child standing up to them, and somehow blame the partner. I'm not saying that's every case. In fact, it might even just be a small fraction of cases, but that's how it felt with me. Maybe I'm rewriting history, but I felt like my parents blamed my ex, but really it was us together standing up to them, going no, and then low contact with them throughout this wedding conflict. So there is that side. There may be parents that really feel like it's the partner, but it's not.
You're absolutely right. And in these situations, it's like we need to find a scapegoat that isn't so sensitive.
Exactly. You want to forgive and love your child, even if they're telling you they don't want to speak with you. So the scapegoat, it must be, how could my son stop talking to me? It must be his wife.
Exactly. So,
I love you, Mom. I'm sorry. I'm trash talking you. It's all in the past.
That was another... I don't want to cause a rift now that you're getting along with your
My
parents.
mom's going to blame you for this conversation if she hears
Let
it, Gary.
her, I got big shoulders. I've been blamed for worse. So yes. And, what we're raising by our discussion, David, is that this isn't a simple and tidy issue, contact problems between children and parents. It's really complex. And so if you're the therapist wading into this, you have to wonder, am I being gaslit? Whether it's the kids or the parents giving me their stories, am I being gaslit? And so we're ever trying to pull on threads and gather family background and information. Can you tell me how things were when you were growing up? Who got along with who? Was there ever any harsh words? Was there ever any hitting in your family? Did anyone ever storm out? Was anyone ever treated in a way that they should never have been treated? Was anyone ever touched in a way they should never have been touched? Did anyone ever intrude on someone else, whether it's, in a conversation or when you're going to the bathroom? So we're forever trying to be mindful of who respects who, how is conflict resolved generally, and how are boundaries facilitated, managed, and respected. And, now let's go the other side. We want to clear things up. If you're the parent and your kid is saying, I can't or don't want contact with you, to start, you have to respect that.
Like you've got to grieve it. You've got to work through it, because in some sense, there's nothing you can do as a parent, even if you feel like it's unfair.
Because think of the paradox. If you seek to push through that, you're inadvertently proving that of which you are blamed. You have no boundaries, parent. What? I have boundaries. There you go. You have no boundaries.
Interesting.
Yeah. So the guidance to the parent is back off. And if there are specific complaints against you, you did this, you do that, self-reflect.
Listen.
Yeah, listen, self-reflect. Might there be some truth to that? The challenge as the parent is to manage your upset, manage your ego, and be curious with your child. Okay, I'm going to respect that. I'm still having trouble understanding. And because I want the relationship, I'm going to respect the boundary you're setting. At the same time, if you can help me to understand this better, I would be most appreciative, because I would like to take responsibility. Wow. Okay? So you don't want to appear defensive. You actually want to appear as, I'm taking this in, I'm respecting your critical feedback of me, I'm mulling it over, and I want to address it.
Yeah.
We want to be, in that sense, we want to be disarming.
No, it's good advice. I wish my parents had taken it.
Well, that's what the parents get who call me. When the kids call me saying, I can't stand them anymore, then the discussion goes to, do they even know? Because sometimes the child hasn't informed the parents, not in an angry way, but informational way. Can you speak to your parents informationally and say, look, these are some of the things that are bothering me, and I need to see them resolved. Otherwise, it's difficult for us to continue the relationship as we have.
When I started getting along with my parents again, I made them go out to dinner with me and I said, you're going to sit there and listen. I'm going to tell you my side of the story of this long drawn out conflict we had that led to some no contact periods. I'm going to say my side and then you're going to repeat it back to me. And it took them 3 tries. And then I said, now you're going to tell me your side of the story and then I'm going to repeat it back to you. And we'll both agree that we have an understanding of each other's sides. Even though we don't agree.
So mechanical.
It was a good
but
exercise.
That is the exercise.
Yep.
That was good, David.
Yeah.
Because I want to make sure that you can repeat it back to me because it says you at least heard what I had to say, believe it or not, but you've at least heard it and you can reiterate it.
Gary Direnfeld is a social worker and therapist. He's retired and not taking clients, so do not try to find him. Gary, thank you for being here.
Great to have this discussion, David.
I'm kidding. Look him up online. He writes some great things on social media. Up next, big box movie theaters are struggling, and Cineplex is betting big on a mystery product to get your butt back in that theater seat. Details in a minute.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644. The show that makes you laugh, think, and occasionally uncomfortable. The Last Show with David Cooper.
Video killed the radio star, but streaming killed the in-person movie theater. Well, the big box theater companies are struggling. Box office revenues are down. Welcome to The Last Show. I'm David Cooper. Big on mystery to bring those audiences back with Monday surprise premieres. Let's find out what those are with Bruce Winder, a retail analyst, to discuss what's going on with theaters these days. Bruce, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on the program.
All right, the big idea, Monday surprise premieres. Do you think it's enough to get audiences back in those seats? Also, just what is it?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting concept. You know, it kind of takes a bit of a page out of the toy category where, you know, like Labubu's, when you buy a Labubu doll, you don't really know which character you're getting. So this involves customers, shoppers going to the theaters, viewers, and they pay a reduced price. They pay $8.99. A normal movie's like $16.99. It's on Monday night. But here's the thing. They don't know what is going to be screened. They know it's a new movie, so they can't, you know, they can't have seen it before, but they really don't know what it is. So that's really the concept behind it. Will it work? You know what? Jury's out. We're going to have to see what customer feedback is. Obviously, the movie industry's hurting. The theater movie industry's hurting because streaming is eating their lunch. So they're trying anything really just to get people back in the chair again.
It reminds me of those Kinder Surprise toys where you'd get the chocolate and who knows what toys inside. For me, the single biggest thing I look at when I go to a movie, it's not the genre, it's not the reviews, it's not whether my friends love it, it's the runtime. I want to know how long I'm going to be in that seat. A crappy movie that's an hour and 45 minutes to me is way better than an Oscar winner that's 3 hours. So I guess my question is, are they telling people how long they have to sit in seats for?
Yeah, that's a great point. I haven't heard anything about that, you know, and they might not be able to because that might give some of this away. But, you know, that's sort of the awkward part of this is sort of how could customers, how theater goers will react once they get in there and they see the flick that's being played. You know, is it something they want? Will they be happy? Or will they literally get up and leave, you know, after 10 or 15 minutes? So that's the risk. And that's awkward if that happens because people normally take to social media and vent, you know, so it's a really a big gamble on their part in terms of their brand and getting out there and sort of playing guinea pig with customers.
This idea, you are quoted, I read an article of you being interviewed on this topic, Bruce, as containing a surprise and delight effect. What is that in terms of like retail sales? What is the surprise and delight effect? What would it be equivalent to? Is it like a Happy Meal toy? Is it a Kinder Surprise? What are some examples in the market of this kind of behavior?
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, those are examples, right? A Happy Meal, Kinder Surprise. It's where you get something unexpected and it makes you happy. You weren't expecting it. You get something and you're like, wow, that's awesome. I wasn't expecting that. That's cooler than I thought. There's more value than I thought. That's really what surprise and delight is. And people like that. some people like a surprise. You look at some of the retailers out there like HomeSense. I was in a HomeSense last Friday, and there's all kinds of shoppers there because it's a bit of a treasure hunt. You don't know what you're going to get when you go through those doors, right? And that's what keeps people going back every week is the treasure hunt effect. So I think they're trying to take a little bit of that and sort of bottle it and use it in the theater industry.
I am not surprised and delighted by a $9 box of Junior Mint caramels, a $7 bag of popcorn. Theaters charge a lot for tickets. They're offering this at the discount. Is that enough to get people in the door, you think?
Well, it's a great question, and you're right. I mean, everyone knows that the concessions are where they make all their money in the theater business, and they're not cheap. They have a monopoly once you enter that store, once you enter that theater. So, I mean, I think it might get people out of their chairs if they're bored on a Monday, maybe, as long as they show some really nice films that are quality films, it might get people coming back, and people might drop an extra $10 on a drink or $15 on a popcorn and a drink. But definitely that's sort of a drag on it is, that, if I sit at home and watch Netflix, I've got all my food here. But if I'm going out to the theater, I'm going to pay, a fair amount here to just have something to drink and eat.
I'm not a lawyer, so this isn't legal advice, but it's against the theater's rules to bring in outside food or drink, but it's not illegal. It's just a violation of your contract, so they could only sue you or kick you out. So you could smuggle popcorn in your underwear if you wanted and violate the monopoly. But again, not legal advice. Why do they charge so much for these things? Is it just because they can get away with it?
It's because they can get away with it. It's sort of, it's like the razor blades and the razor thing. They usually put the razor out at a lower price and then they charge a premium on the replacement blades. It's sort of a similar analogy. They get you in with a reasonable price and then they can make a lot more margin because they have you captive. It's no different than when you go to the airport, and you pay $5 for a coffee. It's because they have a monopoly within that area and they know people need it. So they take the liberty of charging a little more for it.
They make you dump your liquids before you get in. They do have a monopoly. See, that's highly illegal to bring liquids past the security. That one I can't advise you to do.
That is highly illegal, yeah.
Theaters competing with streaming services, is this just going to be a downward trend for theaters? Like streaming services, they're so convenient. Everyone loves them. They add more and more titles. People are more willing to tolerate the fees. Like, I know this is a last-ditch effort to try to get people in these seats, but is it a dying industry? In 20 years, are we going to be having a conversation about why there's no big box theaters anymore?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I do think, sadly, it is a dying industry. I think it's just a matter of time. It's just on a trajectory going down. Sometimes the movie industry can surprise us. Remember Barbenheimer a couple years ago?
Yeah.
And when Taylor Swift had her movie, there are pockets of titles that come out that just bring the people to the theaters, but it's not continuous. It's not constant anymore, right? So it makes for a lot of fluctuation in the business, and I do think over time you're going to see more theaters close. They could take something and do something creative, make it more of industry, make it more of a viewer participant type affair. I think about, I'm going to date myself, but there was a movie that came out in the mid 70s called Rocky Horror Picture Show. And one of the reasons people kept coming back to that is because the audience dressed up like the characters, threw toast at the screen, did all kinds of rituals. And that made it fun. There's a reason that you wouldn't stream that, because there's an audience participation and a community aspect. If they can somehow get that back, even to some degree, that might help them at least slow down the trajectory.
They could take a note out of the book of like local theaters where they're kind of set up to do things like Q&As and have like community participation. Yes, the seats aren't as nice. Yes, the sound system isn't as good. The screen often is kind of not great. The person in front of you is right in front of you. There's no elevated seating, so you can barely see the screen. But those community theaters have screenings where like, the actors will show up or it's an event or they encourage you to dress up or they try to create those mini cultural moments. I feel like Cineplex doesn't really have a pulse on that at all.
No, they're not set up for that. I mean, a few years ago, they tried something called the Rec Room, which is like pool and entertainment and things like that. They may still have it. Then they added a VIP sort of offering where there's a separate theater with luxury type stuff. But I don't think that's really moved the needle too much. I think you're right. I think they have to look hard and maybe be a little more bold in terms of looking at some of those things you mentioned to see if they can get people back in the chair again.
Being an armchair executive, you and me, let's pretend we're the CEO of a major big box theater company. What piece of advice would you give the company? What change would you make knowing that there's no consequences or risk to shareholders?
Yeah, I think that, they need to do some consumer research and they've already done it. They're smart people. But just look outside, think outside the box, pardon the pun, the theater, and think about, is there something you can do to bring people from a community standpoint? Look at the Rocky Horror Picture Show. Look at all the other community theaters. And it's hard, though, because anytime you make a major change to a business model, it's painful. There's losses, there's closings, there's layoffs, there's selling assets at lower prices. So it's ugly and it's hard, but if they really want to stay around, they may have to look seriously at something like that.
My take is offer a small size soda that's really small, because the small is an extra large, and then I got to go to the bathroom during the movie, and then I'm asking my girlfriend what happened, and then everyone's yelling at me to shut up because I missed 5 minutes. Just offer a small soda that's really small.
That's the silver bullet.
Just, they can rip me off for it. I'll still pay the $5. I just want a small soda, a legitimately small soda. This is why I'm not a CEO. Bruce, thanks for coming in to the show and talking to us about this topic. I appreciate you being here.
Thanks, David. Take care. Have a great day.
Bruce Winder, retail analyst. Bonus season is coming, and last year left a lot of employees disappointed. Over half say their 2024 bonuses came in low, which made a lot of people ready to switch jobs for a better one. So how do you navigate this year's bonus conversations? Whether you're the one giving them or hoping to get one, we'll break it down in a few moments. Bosses, workers, or anyone whose spouse has called them the boss, you're going to want to hear this.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644. When the day is done, we're just getting started. The last show with David Cooper.
Expecting a bonus this year and have high hopes? Well, over half of the people that Robert Half surveyed in Canada says they received a smaller bonus or no bonus at all in 2024. What will this year be like for employees expecting that money? We'll discuss that with Trina Casey-Myatt, a regional director at Robert Half. Trina, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Year-end bonuses, they're coming. It's November. It's going to be December. I'm not trying to say I'm a month scientist, but they're coming, and they seem to be smaller than ever for most people. Tell me about your findings from last year. Were you shocked that people are getting less bonuses, or is this just really indicative of the economic times we live in?
I think it's indicative of the economic times that we're living in right now and the uncertainty in the market, and that companies are having to be a little more cautious financially than maybe they have in the past, because they don't know what's around the corner. And so bonuses is one of those variable expenses that they can control.
Most, like when I worked at a normal company and I wasn't in media, my bonus was the percentage was fixed. They couldn't take it away. I mean, maybe they could, maybe they're doing that now, but don't most people have a good understanding of what their bonus is going to be? And then the company just delivers less? Or was my situation more unique where the bonus was fixed? Most people have kind of variable bonuses.
I think that was probably pretty unique. Most organizations have a variable bonus situation that is based on two factors, and in some cases other factors, but one on personal performance, and then also from a company performance perspective. And so companies certainly have an equation that they use to calculate that, but we have seen maybe some organizations having to relook at that calculation, because even though individuals may have a very good personal performance, if the organization isn't performing, it's still hard to financially support that.
Is this a subtle way to kind of get people to quit rather than having to lay them off? Just like pay them less, they get unhappy, and then they leave? Or is it just really that companies cannot afford it these days?
I think in many cases, companies can't afford it, or they're having to be very, very cautious, and they're focused on the future and maintaining their talent for the future. So, I don't think any organization makes a conscious decision just to say, no, we don't want to pay bonuses. It is certainly a way that they do retain their top talent. And in some cases, maybe they still reward their top talent, but the remainder of the staff may not receive the bonus that they expected.
I was a mid-level manager, like a Fortune 500, whatever company in my previous career. I never had the pleasure of having to communicate to the people that reported to me that their bonuses were going to be low this year. But there are people out there who are managers who probably would want to give their employees a good bonus, but can't. They're being told they can't. What recommendations would you have for them? You've basically got to give them bad news, but also try to retain them. How would you even begin to do that?
Yeah, I think it's important that you look at why you do provide bonuses, and it is often in recognition of the work that they did. So, if there isn't a financial reward around it, then it is still important to recognize them for the hard work that they did and the performance that they did have. So, providing them that positive feedback, but also looking at maybe what are some other things that you could potentially provide that are non-monetary that do hold a value to employees.
What could those things be? I feel like that's the kind of thing the corporations say, but really the employees just want the money.
Well, unfortunately, money is important, but flexibility is also very important, and so. Since COVID, there's been a lot of conversation around hybrid work, remote work. And so maybe you can provide some different flexibility in terms of the number of days that you are expecting your employees to be in office. So that's one thing that you can do. The other is flexibility around maybe start and end times. And so for some individuals, depending on their personal life and what they have happening, starting later and ending later might be beneficial, or window working may be beneficial. So I think it's also understanding individually your employees and what might be of value to them.
I left the tech industry. That was the industry I was in before the first round of COVID layoffs at the end of 2020. So I've never had to experience as a manager having to not give my employees bonuses. But if these are the options that you can present, they're okay. But I would not envy any manager right now having to withhold a bonus or give someone less of a bonus. For those employees who want to try to get that bonus, but maybe they'll have to speak up. Maybe there's something they can do heading into review season. Maybe there's a little bit of money and they want to try to make a grab for it. What would you recommend to them? Helping them navigate bonus conversations with their bosses.
Yeah. I think it's important that you understand what your goals were for the year and maybe what some areas of development that were laid out for you in your previous reviews, and coming prepared to talk about what you have done and the additional maybe things that you've taken on, maybe different experiences that you've been able to provide your organization, and what value that brought to the table. Because as a manager, in the moment, you may not remember all of those little things that were done that can add up to something that was very important and had a big impact. So be prepared to remind your manager, these are all of the things that you did. These are the how you've grown as an individual and as an employee. And hopefully that will help you get a little piece of whatever pie there is to receive.
Let's go to this other finding your firm found in a study that 51% of workers said they'd switch employers for one offering a better bonus. So I guess if there's any boss man listening out there, any CEOs, anyone at a corporation looking to cut costs but is in charge of pay and bonuses, is the short of it, don't take away employees' money. The best way to retain people is by paying them what they expect to be paid, an average bonus, not lowering that bonus.
I think it is in today's world. Nothing is getting cheaper. And while it is a bonus, there still is a level of expectation for your overall compensation. So if there's in any way as a company that you can provide those bonuses, then I highly recommend that you do so because every dollar counts to an individual today.
Going into 2025, you think we're going to see about the same level of disappointment as we saw in 2024 with smaller or no bonuses, or are we looking at slightly better times here?
I don't think that we're seeing better times. I think there's
Great.
some optimism, but I'm not so sure we're going to see it in the form of bonuses just yet.
All right. Anything else you want to add on this one before we let you go, Trina?
No, I think employers need to look at how they retain their top talent. Compensation is always a very big part of that. So if you're not able to compensate appropriately, make sure you're looking at other ways to retain those individuals. They have options.
Well, Trina Casey-Myatt is a regional director at Robert Half. If you're expecting a bonus this year, I guess, I don't know, adjust your expectations. Trina, I appreciate you coming on the show. Thanks for the chat.
Thanks for having me.
All right, that's a wrap on the night. That's a wrap on the show. Earlier in the program, we had a science communicator on. If you've got science questions, no question too stupid. In fact, the dumber the better. Call us, leave a voicemail, ask that question, and we'll answer it on the show. The phone number is 1-888-505-6644. That's 1-888-505-6644. Ask us any science question that's been bothering you, like, if atoms are mostly empty space, why can't I walk through walls? What am I doing wrong? Or, if the universe is expanding, what is it expanding into? Because isn't everything the universe? So if it's expanding, isn't it just expanding into itself? Which means it's the same size? Think about it. 1-888-505-6644. Science questions for the last show. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast. Details at our website, www.lastshow.pizza. That's .pizza, not .com. I'm David Cooper, and this was not the first show. Catch you tomorrow night.
This holiday, discover meaningful gifts for everyone on your list at Kay. Not sure where to start? Our jewelry experts are here to help you find or create the perfect gift, in-store or online. Book your appointment today and unwrap love this season, only at Kay.